Castlevania, seeking to answer that age-old question of who would win in a fight. Any monster that you can think of, up to including Count Dracula himself, or one whippy boy. Hello and welcome YouTube, I'm Septimus with the Grim Alliance, and today we're going to talk about Konami's Castlevania series. This is a new and exciting series that I'm starting that's going to delve deeply into the development of games as well as the lore. Pretty much all the games that shaped my childhood. Let's get into that sweet, sweet nostalgia. Now, you don't need to know what an alchemy whip is to enjoy Castlevania. You don't need to know the tragic tale that led to its transformation into the whip that's known today as the Vampire Killer. Hell, you don't even really need to know why Dracula has been such a douchebag to the Belmonts and friends for thousands of years. The games, they're just fun as shit. With tight controls, unique enemies, challenging boss fights, they stand on pure gameplay merit alone. So that's it then, we pack it in, end the video here, and go our separate ways? Well, we could do that, but I'm asking that you don't. Don't go. And it's not because nothing kills the YouTube algorithm's boner for a video faster than a horseshit retention rate. No. It's because I want to make you love Castlevania as much as I love Castlevania. Stick around. I promise you, my enthusiasm, it's contagious. Plus, you might learn something.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Now, for a series that has spanned 35 years, countless consoles, as well as a television Netflix series, I was actually surprised at how much work went into nailing down some of the particulars of the early years. Mostly this comes from Konami and their policy at the time of not putting the real names of developers in the credits, because they were afraid that other companies would poach their workforce. We do know that the OG trilogy of Castlevania, Simon's Quest, and Castlevania III Dracula's Curse were created by a man named Hitoshi Akamatsu. And aside to those of you that may have found yourself wandering in here after falling in love with the Netflix show, just know that you've pretty much just been watching the plot of Castlevania 3. Reading through an interview that was used as a source for much of the Wikipedia page, I stumbled upon 3 things that Mr. Akamatsu said that I just have to stop and mention. Because there's some pretty deep shit, and they're essentially canon because games back then didn't take their stories too seriously. If the director said it, that was pretty much good enough. It made it true. Number 1, in Castlevania, when you face Dracula, you eventually will do enough damage to him, and Dracula's head just goes fucking flying off, and his body explodes into pieces as they fly off screen in all directions. Shortly after that, you fight what speedrunners have dubbed the Cookie Monster. Now we'll get back to that dude in a second, because Mr. Akamatsu has said that the pieces of Dracula scattering are meant to inform you, the player, that Dracula will be back. Here's a quote from it. Says, "That head there, it's foreshadowing Dracula's resurrection," end quote. To me, this means that Simon enters the castle knowing he's going to stop Dracula for now. His family is not necessarily meant to end Dracula. They're just supposed to be a safety measure that exists to kill Dracula if and when he pops up. Think of it as some century-spanning game of whack-a-mole, except instead of a cute carnival animal popping out, it's just a game with an evil vampire that royally fucks the countryside until he's put down. Earlier, I mentioned that cookie monster that pops out of old Papa Drac when you knock his head off. Now here's the thing. If you're like me, and well, pretty much anyone I've talked to, you probably just assumed that was Dracula 2.0. The second phase of the boss fight, where the big bad turns into its stronger and or truer form. Well, we were all wrong. Mr. Akamatsu is quoted as saying, and I quote, "That is a monster born from the curse of man." He adds, "In a truly peaceful age, Dracula would not exist," end quote. That's why Simon is cursed in the second game. It's sort of a magical blowback from fighting and defeating the embodiment of man's curse. The second part there, that's mind blower number 2 for me. In a truly peaceful age, Dracula would not exist. See, now I go back and forth on if this means that if Dracula is sustained by our violence and sin, and if we as mortals stop warring and fighting and generally dragging each other's dicks through the dirt, Dracula would just up and vanish. Poof. Not having the negativity that spawned his inner form around might cause him to weaken and die. Or does that mean that if someone, let's be honest with ourselves, probably a Belmont, if someone were to kill Dracula in a time of peace, that death would end up being permanent? Either one of these scenarios, they provide some truly fascinating food for thought. And directly related is the third thing that kind of blew my mind hole wide open, and I found it fascinating. It's that he said the gears in Dracula's castle are like his heart. As long as they turn, we know that Dracula still lives. Yeah, that may not be as crazy as the first two things, but I still love this shit. I've played all of the original trilogy. They make up a huge part of my childhood. I remember leaving the NES on while I went to school and jumping for joy when the damn thing was still on and not frozen when I returned. Now this is the point in the video where at first I want to thank you and invite you to perhaps throw a like on the video and subscribe, because I fully intend to go through many games just like this that 90 kids will definitely remember fondly. Also, and perhaps more importantly, leave a comment with how your childhood, or maybe even your present day, has been enriched by the struggle between Belmont and Vampire. Now that you've subscribed, I feel like I can confess something to you. I haven't played Rondo of Blood or Symphony of the Night. Now this sin goes double because I'm actually a huge Metroidvania fan too. The video on that will come out soon, I promise. Now I consider Rondo of Blood and Symphony of Night to be equal importance to the trilogy that we mentioned earlier. Here's why. Symphony of the Night, it was a PlayStation game, and as such, it provided an entry point for a second wave of fans to fall in love with the series. Here's the thing. I'm old. I started gaming on the NES, yet even I find it hard to go back to the NES graphics and controls unless I'm in that perfect nostalgia, sort of retro gaming mood. They were great at the time, don't get me wrong, but they're definitely starting to show their age. Rondo of Blood stars Richter Belmont, one of the first Belmonts to be able to enter Dracula's castle without having to wear short shorts and baby oil the ever-loving shit out of his legs. I feel like Rondo of Blood was less popular, and honestly, without the amazing follow-up to Richter's tale that is Symphony of the Night, it may have been even less popular. There's a dark wizard guy named Shaft. No, not that Shaft. He kidnaps Richter's lady for a trap because that's sort of what Dracula does, and that's what he wants his minions to do. And Richter doesn't like this, so he goes and he fucks Dracula up because that's kind of what the Belmonts do. Then you have Symphony of the Night, which is essentially just the aftermath, where Alucard comes home and he rolls in, looks around at the mess, roams a castle looking for answers in one of the greatest games of the PlayStation era, or some would argue one of the greatest games of all time. I definitely need to buy those games on the PS5 and give them a play. The reason I think I love the Richter years so much is they mark an end of the Belmont clan. For a while at least. For 200 years, we humans had to make weird organizations and cabals and figure out whatever we could to fight evil until the next Belmont appears in the year 1999. We started with Simon Belmont, and we ended sort of with Julius Belmont, at least mentioning him, in August of 1999. And in that, we've covered from America being 25 years old to me being a senior in high school. I'm not young, as I've mentioned. I think daydreaming about this alternate history, this alternate timeline, has brought me as much or more joy than playing the games themselves at times. I think I'm going to leave you here for now. I'll leave you with the promise of more videos to come, and the promise that I'm definitely playing Rondo and Symphony soon. Until next time, I've been Septimus with the Grim Alliance, and you have been an absolutely amazing audience. I thank you.